Yo, what is up guys? It's Pedro here, and in today's video I'll be talking about how some NFL executives and a lot of NFL reporters think that there's a big chance that the Washington Commanders try to go after Caleb Williams after a recent move they made, and some even think they're the favorites to land him. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell as well. Make sure you guys check out BetUS, first link in the description. So let's talk about this and if I believe these reports, and I think it's going to be true. And the move I'm talking about that makes it more likely, at least, that the Washington Commanders land Caleb Williams is hiring Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator. I think they announced that Sunday night-ish, maybe Monday night, but I think it was Sunday night, Saturday or Sunday night. Not completely sure, but that's, it was recent. And after that, a lot of people started, we started to hear a lot of chatter about, okay, maybe Cliff or Adam Peters brought in Cliff, or Dan Quinn brought in Cliff so that they can get Caleb, or maybe now they're going to get Caleb, blah, blah, blah. And, these CBS reporters were talking about it, had, I think, former coach on there, some executives. I didn't watch the full video. I'm not going to play it for you guys because it's like 5 minutes and 30 seconds long, and there's some copyright issues there. But they did talk a lot about the possibility of Caleb Williams coming to DC and them trading up to 1. And, one of them says it does feel like it's going to happen. And obviously you got to take it with a grain of salt. These are all, some of them are reporters, and, none of them, I believe, are in the league right now in terms of executives. But it is something to keep in mind right there. After the Commanders it was announced that the Commanders hired Cliff Kingsbury, Adam Schefter says, let the speculation begin. Cliff Kingsbury coached Caleb Williams last season. Williams was a standout QB at Gonzaga High School in Washington, D.C. The Commanders have the number 2 overall pick and are in striking distance of the number 1 overall pick. That belongs to Chicago. I should have probably mentioned that earlier. The connection between Cliff and Caleb. Caleb, went to USC this past season, or the last couple of seasons, after he was at Oklahoma. And Cliff coached him, was his quarterback's coach, and was a senior offensive assistant, I believe, for USC. So USC, had a little bit of a down year compared to what they, thought they were going to do. But Caleb still had a solid year. And I know a lot of people aren't the biggest Caleb fans because, he paints his nails, or because he's a drama queen, or they think he's a drama queen, or he doesn't play well against, good competition. And some of those things might be true, a little bit true. I'm not going to say so or not. I really don't know him personally. Of course, I don't know him personally. But what I will say is he's a very good player. And I think he's one of the best quarterback prospects that we've had in the draft in a very long time. And at least a few years since maybe Trevor Lawrence, and maybe even he might be better than him. Not completely sure. And obviously, sometimes the top guys don't work out. Sometimes the number 1 overall picks don't work out. Trevor Lawrence has had a solid career, but not up to what we thought he would be, and he still has time. But just because you're such a good prospect doesn't mean you're gonna be that that guy. You still have to be developed properly, and you still have to put in that work and be a good player. And some of those guys do it, sometimes they don't. And some guys that are drafted in the 6th round like Tom Brady, or 7th round like Brock Purdy, end up being studs. So it all depends, but Caleb Williams is a very good talent, and I think that the Washington Commanders, if he's somehow there at 2, they sprint to the podium, but that's not going to happen. It really comes down to, do the Bears take him or not? Or maybe, because if they're taking a quarterback, I really just think it's going to be Caleb. I don't think they're going to be like, you know what, we'll trade back to 2, get some draft picks, and then you can take Caleb. Maybe they'll do that I think the only way they do that is if we think Caleb's the number 1 quarterback and they think Jaden Daniels or Drake May is the number 1 quarterback. That's like the only way I would see them possibly taking or trading back, really. That's my thought on the situation, and it's going to take a lot to trade up that 1 spot. Probably going to take, I really don't know. Even though it's 1 spot, it's probably going to be a 1st round pick next year, which is really tough to give up. That's what a lot of people are saying. And then maybe a 2nd round pick too. I personally don't know if I would do that. That's a lot to give up for 1 spot when this is a good quarterback draft. But hey, if you really want to get your guy, sometimes you have to make sacrifices, and that would be a big sacrifice to make. And that is something that Adam Peters has talked about in some interviews that I watched. And I might make a whole video on this, but if you really like that guy, you're going to give up that capital to get him. So that is something to keep in mind with Caleb Williams in Washington or whatever, just in the future, if they're thinking about trading up to get these guys. But real quick, a word from today's sponsor, BetUS. And a huge shout out to BetUS for sponsoring today's video. BetUS is the leading online sports betting company. They have so many different sports that you can bet on, and they're very reliable, secure, and they've got very good customer service. So check them out. And you obviously got the big game this weekend with the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs facing off in the Super Bowl on Sunday night. But they have a very good new deal at BetUS where you get 125% bonus, not only on your first deposit, but on your first 3 deposits with the promo code JOIN, all caps, 125. Again, join 125. Plus, they'll give you 10% gambler's insurance for your net losses if you're active for every 6 months. So make sure you guys check them out. Link in the description. Again, big game this weekend, and they have so many different props that you can make. And I'm going to make a video, or in one of my next videos, I'll go over some props that I like for the game. All right, and a huge shout out again to BetUS for sponsoring today's video and this entire past NFL season. So let's get back into it. And I didn't mention this before, but when Adam Schefter says something, you have to listen. And I haven't always been the biggest Adam Schefter fan. He's had his, mistakes, the drama that he's had in terms of some of his reporting before, but he is plugged in. He knows what's up a lot of the times, and he was right about the Ben Johnson thing. Everyone else was saying it's, almost a done deal. Ben Johnson's going to be the next coach in Washington. And he was like, not so fast. It might happen, but he's not the favorite, and it's not a slam dunk when everyone else is, a lot of the other big reporters were saying it's going to happen, and John Kahn was kind of with him. Like, both of them in the beginning probably thought it was going to be Ben Johnson, and I know John Kahn predicted that, but things change, and the reporting reflected that, so just want to give him props on that. But all that to say that when Adam Schefter says something, you have to keep it in the back of your mind, because he does get a lot of things right. But he also did say, and I saw some reports saying that he thinks the Bears will take Caleb Williams. There's still a lot of time left, but usually what you hear in the beginning of the draft period is usually what ends up being what happens at the end. It'll change throughout the rumors and stuff and the narrative, but by the end, what was happening in the beginning usually ends up being what happens at the end, and there's going to be a bunch of rumors midway through. Like, probably there'll be a week where it's like, oh, Commanders are taking Marvin Harrison. I mean, I even saw that rumor today. Commanders are going to take Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt, whoever the player is. We're going to get those rumors for a week or two. Just like when in the beginning of the process in 2020, we all knew it was going to be Chase Young. And then midway through, they're like, maybe Tua, maybe an offensive lineman, maybe Justin. I mean, no one was saying Herbert, but a lot of people were saying Tua or maybe an offensive lineman or trade back, and it never happened. So that's just, it's a thing that happens every draft cycle, especially at the top, where at some point there's going to be rumors that change the narrative a little bit, but it always usually comes back to what was said at the beginning of the process. And I think that's probably what's going to be the case here with Washington. But I would love to get Caleb Williams. You see the connection there with him and Cliff Kingsbury. You see the Cliff Kingsbury Drake May connection. Ties to Phil Longo, who was UNC OC in 2022, and then Jaden Daniels. He coached Kyler Murray from 2019 to 2022, who has a similar skill set to Jaden Daniels. This is what Caleb Williams said after Cliff Kingsbury got hired as a Commanders, or it got announced that he got hired. He said, "My dog, congrats." So he likes him definitely, and he's from the DC area. Pretty sure he's a Commanders fan. Grew up watching the Skins and the football team and Commanders. So it's another factor, and I know that's another thing that people don't like, is that he's a hometown kid, and they think, especially with the, Chase Young and rest in peace Dwayne Haskins, where those two didn't work out, it's not going to work out with him. But every person's different. Some people can handle being at home, some people can't, and sometimes it didn't really, I don't really think the Chase Young being at home thing really mattered. I really don't. I think the injury and a little bit of his mentality as well were the reasons, and maybe even a little bit of coaching as well. I don't think it was him being at home near where he grew up is the reason why it didn't work out in Washington. It was a bunch of different reasons, and I didn't even get into the Caleb Williams stats, but here they are. Won the Heisman in 2022, 42 touchdowns, 5 picks. Still had a good year this year, just not as good as the year before. 30 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Completion percentage was up, though. Pass rating was up, took a little bit more sacks, and interceptions were right around the same. Yards per attempt or per completion, I don't know which one that is, was up. And again, you look at his rushing numbers, he's not a big rusher. Average 1 yard a carry, but again, college stats a little bit different because the sacks take into, like, their rushing stats take into account the sacks that they lost, but he's never been a big rusher. 11 touchdowns, though, this past year, 10 the year before. Like, he can, it's just crazy how similar he is to Mahomes. And again, not saying he is Mahomes, but Mahomes wasn't a top prospect coming out of college. He had to be developed. Just something to keep in mind there. But he possesses a lot of the same skills Mahomes does. Ability to extend plays, throwing off platform, weird angled throws, and even able, his ability to get the 4 or 5 yards rushing when he needs to, and then get down, right away. That's one of the pluses about Caleb Williams. And I would love to have him in DC. I know people think differently. That's fine. Everyone thinks, has their own opinions, and we're not going to know for a while. We're not going to know for a while what happens and how good these guys will be. But I would be very, very happy if we got Caleb Williams in DC. It's going to take a lot to draft him. Honestly, the only way I could see it happening is if the Bears don't think Caleb Williams is QB1 and they think Jaden Daniels or Drake May is, and maybe in that case their leverage is going to be a little bit lower. Because, again, if other teams know that, then they could be like, well, if you think Drake May is your number 1 quarterback, then take him at 1. That's something that could be talked about. Or if Caleb Williams pulls like an Eli Manning and says, I'm not going to be drafted by the Bears. I'm not going to the Bears. I'm going to the Commanders because I like Cliff Kingsbury and stuff. That's another thing he could do. I just doubt he does that. But, hey, it is what it is. That's it for today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you guys are new, and peace.